you mentioned the sharpening component for your average listener out there that isn't going to have a grinder or a belt sander. I mean, whatever. I'm not assuming to know how you sharpen them at your shop. I'm assuming though that there's equipment that most people, it wouldn't make sense for them to invest in.
Sure.
So for that, like, are you a strop guy? Do you like the Lansky style stuff? Is it more of a like the sanding discs or wheels that you just roll on with the magnetic edge placer or whatever?
Right.
Like, what would you recommend?
So this is where buying a high quality knife, it starts with actually the knife that you have. People will bring me stuff and be like, I can't sharpen this thing. I suck at sharpening. And then I look at it and it's like, well, it's steel. It's super thick. The edge geometry is crazy thick. It was never made right in the beginning. And then you've tried to sharpen this thing over the years and it's just this bull-nosed round edge, right? When you sharpen a knife, you're taking steel off of the blade, right? You're actually grinding steel off of that edge at a really fine level. And so, one, it starts with the edge geometry of that blade. That's why our blades, you look at most of our blades are quite thin. They're thin behind the edge, which is going to make it, one, it's easier for them to pass through material when you're cutting, but then it's going to also be easier. There's less to contend with back there for a stone when you're sharpening. And then it is the kind of steel, there are steels out there that will hold an edge longer than ours out of a box when you look at it like a wear resistance, but then they're going to be an absolute bitch to get an edge back on. Yeah. And so when you select a steel as a knife maker, you have to select a steel that's going to be wear resistant, it's going to be tough, but it's also not going to be impossible for the customer to maintain themselves.
Yeah.
So with all that being said, once you have the right blade, it depends a little bit on the situation. If you leave the house, that blade's smoking sharp, and you shoot a couple pigs or an elk or something like that, and you're partway through and you're feeling like you need a little touch up, we actually did a little packing sharpening stone with Work Sharp. It's just like a 600 grit diamond on one side, and it's just a small little, probably 5-inch long stone that's super light, and that's just meant for a quick touch up in the field to kind of get you through whatever you're doing. I always suggest people have like a bench stone at home that's a little bit heavier, maybe a couple inches wide, 8 inches long, 10 inches long. You may even want a couple grits, like a 220 grit stone for actually just doing work. Like you need to reset this edge entirely, or you got to really move some steel. Start with that and then transition down to like a 600 or an 800 grit. You refine that edge. And then the strop, like a leather strop, is kind of just those final passes to kind of align that burr on the edge of the blade. For people to imagine what I kind of try to correlate this to is if you look at an edge of a knife under a microscope, a proper edge, like a working edge for rope or hide or hair, stuff like that, will actually look like a saw under a microscope. There's little microscopic teeth. And as you use that blade, those teeth are actually grabbing and ripping at whatever you're cutting. And over time, those teeth, like on a saw, they start to dull out, they start to round over, and eventually those teeth entirely go away and it's just slick, right? So when you sharpen, you actually need to kind of rebuild that saw edge, that wire edge. And depending on the use, you can make that burr a little heavier. Or a little bit finer, right? If it's a chef's knife, something in the kitchen, maybe you're wanting it real fine. And I have YouTube videos on our YouTube that kind of explain this stuff. But you start putting that in that context, people can start to visualize what they're looking for.
Yeah.
I'm not a huge fan of a lot of the powered stuff, like the powered belt grinders and stuff that people can buy, because I've seen people bring some of our stuff back and they take way too much off. They get way too aggressive with a rough belt. That being said, if you have some knives that have been passed down and they're super thick and heavy, those actually can be probably the best way to get a decent edge back, because you frankly need to grind some steel off to get things reset.
Yeah. What about, so it sounds like microscopically, even normal blades are kind of serrated. What about like full-blown serrated blades? Like those seem like they would be impossible to sharpen.
Yeah, they pretty much are. I mean, that's we don't actually build any right now. To even do a serrated blade, you have to have a serration grinder. It's about $600,000. We'll probably have one in a couple of years. Certain jobs, people like it for cutting some rope and stuff. My argument is, you know, especially for like the military guys, I think you're absolutely, I think you're kind of fucked up if you're going out in the field and your knife's not sharp. It's like having a dirty gun, right? Like keep your shit tight, right? And so if your blade's getting dull at all, it should be sharp. If you have a sharp knife, it should cut rope. You know, this idea like, well, I need this blade to, you know, a serrated blade to cut rope. It's like, well, a brand new sharp blade that's sharpened right will cut the shit out of rope. That's my problem with serrations is once they're dull, they're damn near impossible for people to get sharp.
Yeah.
But you know, they have their place and their purpose, but it's actually kind of interesting how few requests we get from people for a serrated blade.
Really?
Like maybe once or twice a month, maybe.
Yeah. Would you throw kitchen knives in the same category in terms of how to sharpen them and maintain them?
Yeah, just with finer stones. You know, some of those kitchen knife stones can go up to like 8,000 grit, which is really, really fine. But generally, yeah, it's with a stone, and you kind of step that down. If you're just doing maintenance, it can be with a real fine stone. And I generally see people with honing rods kind of fuck edges up because they get a little crazy and their angles are all over the map. You know, I think it's better to take a little bit of time on a stone and, you know, try to be a little bit more precise.
Yeah. What is your take on, I guess, whether it's kitchen knives or we'll call them normal hunting knives, the two sharpening methods I've used that seem like they work fairly well. One is it's the disc. It's that wheel that it's a little magnet. It says like 15, 20, 25. You know, it gives you the degree angle. You slap that on the knife and then roll that actually works fairly well.
You know, it's funny. I just ordered one. I haven't even messed with them. Yeah. I ordered one because I do want to be able to answer these questions for customers. I don't see why it wouldn't work. I think it helps people be consistent. A lot of people are too worried about the angle a little bit. Like 1 degree here or there isn't going to hurt you. Yeah. I think it actually stops people a lot of times from even wanting to sharpen their own knife because they're so worried about the angle. What's more important is consistency. You know, whatever angle you are at, if it's 17, 18, 20 degrees, you try to maintain that angle and get a nice crisp edge.
Yeah. To me, it just makes it mindless. You know, it's like if you have the 20-degree angle on it, like you just swipe it a handful of times on each side, wipe it off, and now it's fucking sharp again.
Yeah.
You know, for a basic kitchen knife that's not an heirloom, that, you know, that you're not stabbing fucking pigs with a dog on their ear, you know, your life fucking depends on it, type of thing. The other one is that I've used that I don't think works as well, but I'm curious to get your take. I don't even know what the fuck you would call it, but it's like this metal piece that almost looks like a shield, and it's got these two rods that like have tension that you can split open, and it's a V, and you run it that way.
I'm really not a fan of the pull through V rod stuff. You know, it does not give you the same edge that I'm looking for with that wire edge and whatnot. I've never found a V rod situation that I thought got anywhere near, like you say, the disc one where you're sliding and stuff. That makes more sense. Yeah. You know, stones and even some of those grinders and whatnot, you can get a lot of good results out of. There's ones where you can clamp on the blade and kind of, you know, it keeps again that same angle. Yeah, those work. Yeah, those Lanskys work fine.
Yeah, and that's what we used in buds, because the dive knife that we carry is like similarly, that was part of your kit that it's on you all the time. Like an instructor could come up and say, "Let me see your knife," you know, anytime, and test for sharpness. Usually it's just during a room inspection. But they would try to shave their hair and, you know, do a couple little things, or their fucking fingernails or whatever. And if it wasn't sharp enough, like, they would take it. And then there's the bunks with the square tube metal frames, they would take it and just fucking bang the edge on that and be like, this motherfucker better be sharp tomorrow. And there's like a fucking serrated ridge taken out of it. And you're like, holy fuck, it's going to take me a fucking month to sharpen that thing, But
yeah, but I mean, on the kind of the especially the tactical side of the world, like, or a first responder, if you pull your blade out, outside of just a normal, everyday task, generally it might be a situation where speed is required. Like you need to cut something free quickly, in a dive situation. Maybe someone's tangled up in some ropes. They're getting drugged to the fucking bottom. If you don't cut
sea
that
lions
rope.
attacking you.
Yeah. I try to stay out of the damn ocean, but, myself personally, but
well, yeah. So on that too, I guess you mentioned the thickness, is that you see a lot of blades that are too thick to keep a good edge on. Where do you kind of put like axes, tomahawks, kukris, things that are meant to have a lot of weight behind them for chopping and, or killing or whatever? Is that an exception, or are you still going for as thin as possible? But
well, even with a blade, even with a knife blade, there starts to become there's a bit of a balance and there's a trade-off here, right? So the way that heat treating of a blade works is, people get these terms wrong all the time, but they'll ask, how hard is that blade? It's like, well, it's 60, 61 Rockwell. Well, I got a blade that's 66 Rockwell. It's hard as hell. It's like, well, congratulations, but you're carrying also a piece of glass. It's gonna break, or you're gonna have to make that blade so thick to make it, hold up to any kind of flex, right? So there's toughness and there's hardness, and it's an inverse scale. So the harder a blade is, the less toughness you're gonna have. As you lower that hardness with heat treating, then that's where toughness comes in. So for example, when I did my journeyman test at 15 and my master bladesmith test at 19, I had to build a blade that would chop a 1-inch rope in half in one chop, which that just shows sharpness. And it does show a little bit of edge geometry. If you have this big bull-nosed edge, even if it's sharp, it hits that rope, it's gonna be hard for it to pass through, right? Okay, so without sharpening, you then have to chop 2 2x4s in half, and that blade still has to shave. So as many chops as you want, you get through 2 2x4s. It's got to shave hair off the arm. So now that starts to show you it's got wear resistance. It clearly put up to all that work, and it's still sharp. But if it's too hard, and you hit knot in that board or something, your edge is going to chip. And there again, if your edge is too thin, like if you try to do that with a chef's knife, it doesn't have enough support behind that edge, that leading edge, it's going to chip out. Yeah. Okay. So once you're all done with that and that blade shaves, you now have to bend that blade in a vise 90 degrees without breaking it.
Holy shit.
So what you've just proven is that you have the ability as a knife maker to make a blade that's hard enough to hold up to wear with the rope and the 2x4, but still tough enough to hold up to abuse with like side flexion, with strength, right? And that's finding that really good balance. And that also is in your selection of steel. Not every steel is going to do that. And so if you choose the wrong steel from the beginning, you're fucked.